We're lucky to get some time with Roland Lazenby. Let's talk about his new book, Magic, The Life of Earvin Magic Johnson. Roland, thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you, Jason and Jeffrey. You guys doing all right?
We got no complaints. I mean, look, we're in Philadelphia, so we've had a week with
Yeah,
sports. We
yeah.
figured right on to basketball and just leave that baseball in the rearview mirror.
Are you sure you want to do that?
Well,
Yeah,
if you don't want to talk basketball, I have a really stupid question to ask you. And I admit that it is stupid, but your name is not a common last name. And so I got to ask whether or not anybody ever asked you if you were related to the original James Bond, George Lazenby.
Well, let's see. My first name is Roland. You could also ask me how many times I've had people sing Rolling on the River to me,
oh God.
which started, in early high school whenever Creedence brought that out. Yeah, I've been asked about the Lazenby connection a lot. And I will tell you that Jack Kent Cooke told me once that I didn't know how to pronounce my own last name.
Most importantly, what was your response? And can you
Uh,
say that on the air?
I, yeah, no, I said, well, my father pronounced it Lazenby. I admitted to him, we're hillbillies down here in the sticks of the Blue Ridge Mountains, the western part of Virginia. So who knows what that originated at? It's a English name. There's a village, Lazenby. I don't know if it's Lazenby or what, but I'm not really particular about how people pronounce my name. It would have been an immense waste of time to have cared much about that.
All
Uh,
right. Well, now we're going to make you talk a little basketball. Jason, why don't you take it?
Good. Oh, I was just referring to the Sixers. I mean, of all the heartaches in Philadelphia,
yeah.
Yeah.
and
We have another one with the Phillies right now, but we're about to start the one with the
oh,
Sixers. Go ahead.
that's what I'm speaking about. Of all the heartaches in Philadelphia, then to have to turn around and face, I mean, it's really,
Yeah, it was great.
really tough.
The Phillies season ended and they sent James Harden home. It's just exactly what we wanted to move on to here in Philadelphia.
Right. Right.
When are you gonna write the book on the process? You've written about all these other great teams. When are you gonna write the book on the process?
I've got to do a Stern project. I've got to do a LeBron project. I'm 71. These are fun. I just ruptured my quad. So I'm suddenly, for the first time, really contemplating my mortality and if I should retire, but I don't think I will. I enjoy too much.
Well, you've now written over 30 biographies and memoirs. You've written about some of the greats in the game, from Michael Jordan to Kobe, Jerry West. Why Magic and why now?
It just happened to be the order in which publishers would take them. I had, and I also had I got to know Magic a fairly good bit. I mean, some ways nobody ever gets to know Magic, especially not media people. Some have, but I mean, he's so friendly and accessible, and so that was easy in 89, 90 when I was first getting to know him. But I ended up spending a lot more time with the Bulls. And so I got to know that whole group of Jordan and everybody, especially Tex Winter. And coming out of that, I really moved back, started doing Lakers projects. I got to know Kobe. I spent a lot of time with him as a young player. And, from the early stuff, Jerry West had been my old man's hero. So that was something I wanted to write. My old man was one of these old two-handed set shooters out of the hills of southern West Virginia, a basketball nut. Anyway, and I wanted to do Magic in there, but even before Kobe. But analytics hadn't just infected sports; it's also infected publishing, and so Little Brown, my publisher at the time, was worried that there weren't enough internet searches for Magic. And so Macmillan, my current publisher, had no such concerns. They knew Magic would be a very important story to tell. And, I think it's a phenomenon of the age, and Magic played a major role in it, that nobody gave a hoot about American professional basketball now. Eddie Gottlieb there in Philly made a good run at it. He had ways. He played Jumpin' Joe Fulks, who became the game's first 20-point scorer with the old Warriors. He played Jumpin' Joe Fulks enough to run up the points. When Wilt came along, he played him all but 4 minutes of the whole damn season at one point there to make sure those numbers were high. He knew what the NBA learned today. You got to jack up the game so that people score lots of points, so that they get on their phones and they're all engaged. But somewhere in the middle, starting about 79, when David Stern began, this lawyer from Proskauer on Times Square, began gaining power and was getting ready to have a coup d'etat at the NBA and take charge of things. And here come Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, and they've already got the esteemed Dr. J. There's this flood of talent coming into the game that can really actually get something. And right behind them, here comes Michael Jordan. And suddenly the NBA realizes what Eddie Gottlieb knew in Philly years before, that it's about the players, and you've got magnificent players. You gotta sell that. And the NBA went from a game where they couldn't sell tickets. They had to book doubleheaders with the Harlem Globetrotters to get people to come. It went to this game that now the whole world has this love affair with NBA superstars. My Michael Jordan book, which came out from Little Brown in 2014, is in 21 languages. The 21st happened just this week with Portuguese. The Kobe Bryant book I did is in 12. Magic is already signed up for 7 languages. And, these are not easy things. My Magic books, I'm an idiot. It's 800 pages. Who publishes an 800? And Jordan was 700 and some pages. And so that tells you the love and care these foreign publishers have. And they've sold a lot of copies of these books. And nobody gives a hoot who I am. I'm as big a zero in the equation as you could be. But they love American basketball superstars.
You mentioned 800 pages. You really go all the way back. I mean, you go to his great-great-grandfather. But coming ahead, you interviewed his high school basketball coaches more than 50 times each. I didn't know about Magic's history with the Lansing busing situation and his brother basically being kicked off the team that he ended up playing on for being black. Can you talk about how Magic, even as an early age, was on the cutting edge of community issues?
Yes, and thank you for stopping me on that run. I wax poetic about the great overview of the NBA, but I really have spent time on this book and the nuts and bolts of, and it was Magic. It was really how we integrated around basketball, which I think is an important American story. But I was a varsity head coach at age 24 in that era, and I coached a lot of impressive kids. But the Magic I discovered in looking for the organic early years of his life, I'm going to tell you, he was a really impressive kid from an impressive family. And, he just did so many things right. Had such a, and he had difficulties. He had reading difficulties. He worked to overcome those at a young age. He had diction difficulties. He worked to overcome those. And none of that really mattered or held him back. He had such a vast emotional gift. And in addition to all the athletic skills, I mean, and so the people running the Lansing schools faced with all this violence, particularly at Everett High School, that had dragged on not 1 year, 2 years, several years. And they just knew that he would come in and change things. And before he ever played a game at Everett High School, the principal called him in and said, "We need you to help, calm this situation down, sort this out." And Magic said, "How in the heck am I going to do that? I'm 15 years old," and had just turned 15. And the principal said, "You'll figure it out." And, that's pretty much how he fit into that. And the good things that happened really came out of his sort of uncompromising stewardship. When you think about it, he was ceded all this power by the school administration, but then he turned around and held that same administration to task on practical issues about racial integration. Like, how about playing a little black music in the cafeteria? How about having a few black cheerleaders? And so even at 15, he was standing up to the same people that he was working with, but he did it his own way.
Magic is an international star, always has been. How is it that you were able to bring out these stories and stories about the magic behind the scenes that a lot of us just didn't know? Magic seems to, his aura has always been this guy with this infectious smile and this positive attitude. And while all of that is there, there is also below the surface this strength, this quiet strength that he seems to have, and in not even tooting his own horn about all the stuff that you write about in your book.
At the same time, an immense control freak. I mean, it's a wonder to me that he didn't want to be a coach, because he is such a control freak. But yes, it's complicated. The same thing was true with Michael Jordan, the life. There was this rich story, this backstory, and both Magic's mother and Michael's mother come out of the sharecropping culture in North Carolina that was just brutal. And it was, there in the agricultural world, the state that had more Ku Klux Klan members than all the other southern states combined. But people marveled at it. Nobody had really spent a lot of time talking to George Fox or Pat Holland. And Magic was always pretty big about controlling his own narrative. And I mean, fiercely. I talked to his mother, had a lovely conversation with his mother at the 1992 All-Star game in Orlando. And I went over to tell Magic about it. And he looked at me very seriously and said, "She shouldn't be telling you my secrets." And when I really, to research a biography, you get into every phase. And I realized he had at one point 10 siblings, all kinds of family members all over America. And you never hear a peep out of any of them. And he is that kind of control freak. Now, we all want to control our narratives, and we all want to, keep our image headed in the right direction. But it's so far beyond that with Magic Johnson. He controlled his coaches. He controlled the way the game was played. As Dale Beard, his teammate in high school, told me, a guy who was the best man at Magic's wedding, he said, "I couldn't play my game. I had to play the way Magic wanted me to play, or I was going to sit on the bench." And that level of control freak, combined with this tremendous emotional intelligence and this, I mean, you just have to admire his humanity. and his ability with people is just, it's beyond rare and uncommon. And so you have to admire all that, but you have to wonder at it too.
You talk about his desire for control, and the book is interesting because it's balanced. It's not just a puff piece on magic. It talks about the warts and the flaws that he went through, but at the same time, Jerry West said to you that you can see what people do on the floor, but you can't read their heart. You've said the crux of this book shows how magic was a function of his heart. Can you talk more about that side of it?
Yeah, because nobody saw that, and Jerry West revealed that to me in a 1990 conversation, looking back on Magic's career, and also looking at the nature of talent scouting. Jerry West, of course, a great talent, who then became a great talent scout. But he was telling me that, and Dr. Jack Ramsey, the great coach, obviously with the Portland Trailblazers and also of college fame in the Philadelphia area, told me in 2004, I didn't think Magic could work as a pro point guard. And he talked about how Portland, because of his weak left hand, they just victimized him all that freshman year. But it was almost like those reading troubles in sixth grade for Magic. He took that weak left hand, and the next year he came back, as Dr. Jack pointed out, those weaknesses weren't there. And he's had that drive. It's been and Billy Packer said basically the same thing without really knowing about what Jerry West had told me. Billy Packer, my dear friend, who also has passed on since I interviewed him for the book, and Billy and I have done 5 books together. But Billy talked about being a broadcaster for that great Final Four game against Indiana State and Larry Bird and Michigan State and Magic. And he said, none of us, and we were the broadcast team in college basketball, Al McGuire, Dick Unberg, none of us thought that Magic Johnson or Larry Bird, for that matter, would really be able to do anything in pro basketball. And what we did not understand, as Billy says, we had no idea of the heart of either one of those guys, but especially the heart of Magic Johnson.
It seems you mentioned Michael Jordan earlier. It seems that Magic and Michael were very similar internally, but to the outside world, Magic and Michael are seen very differently. Michael is seen as kind of this cold competitor, while Magic, even though he was just as much a competitor, always had this smile and air of enjoying the game more.
Yeah, believe me, it irritated opponents plenty. But you could see the sort of his eyes weren't smiling all the time. I mean, he had the natural smile, but there were a lot of processors going on. He was doing a lot of calculating, and it was not it was not entirely selfish, or maybe even selfish at all, but his calculating was about winning. And they were Michael Jordan's hero as a high school junior and senior was Magic Johnson, to the point that Michael Jordan began calling himself Magic Mike, and his girlfriend bought a vanity plate for his first car, Magic Mike. And Michael Jordan really was trying to learn to throw no-look passes in high school practice each day. He thought he would be a point guard. And he got to UNC, and Dean Smith said, lose the Magic Mike, supposedly. There's only one Magic. And that obviously was the beginning of a very interesting timeline for those two, a timeline that carries on pretty strongly today. They're still competing like madmen in the commercial race, in the boat race for for commerce and business. And it might be a canoe race, and Magic's in the canoe and he's 100 yards back and paddling furiously, maybe a quarter mile back.
You know, you've watched and you track it in this book, the game change through the years, but you mentioned at the beginning of the interview, they sort of were the start of making the NBA more fun, which has now continued into the personalities and the individualism in the NBA. Can you talk about how Magic and Larry and Michael, you know, these players you've written about, sort of the leading edge of the NBA that we see today?
Well, yeah, they did it. David Stearns, recognized that. He didn't know that it was going to be Larry and Magic, but when it happened, he soon enough moved in place to become commissioner. He really opened up things to grow the NBA globally. He grew the NBA as a professional organization. He really focused on marketing and things. Larry O'Brien, the former commissioner before David Stern, did some of the things to create the merger of the NBA and the ABA. But he really was a function of the Kennedy administration and Camelot. And he really didn't have his focus on the modern NBA. It was by 79, the regular TV ratings had dropped 25%. As we know, the great Game 6 in Philadelphia in the 1980 championship series between the Lakers and the Sixers was on tape delay. And the teams were losing lots of money. The NBA was not in good shape. Pro basketball had never been robust in any sense. But David Stern knew to focus on these great players, and it became a succession. Jordan followed right in line, and all of this stuff began to blow up. The 92 Dream Team was a red letter mark. Here comes Kobe and all of his competitions, and just the love and focus. When you look at how downtrodden, how victimized and put upon Black males were in our culture, in our history, and then to see them become these basically global warrior figures. Now they weren't like samurai cutting people's heads off, but they were warriors all the same. That's why they're loved in Japan, China, Italy. I could go through all the countries that have printed and reprinted these books about these guys. And that reversal is an astounding and wonderful and important thing for our world. And it's multifaceted. It's not just basketball, but basketball is a big part of it. And Magic played such a role in that. The thing I find so disheartening is how the game has been intentionally changed and has moved away from a lot of that. Now, it's swinging back around a little bit, but a lot of the things that brought us this special appreciation are really no longer allowed in today's game. And so you wonder if a generation of players like the ones we've discussed, Larry and Magic and Michael and Kobe and those guys came along, I think they'd be great in any era. But the way the game is played today, I don't know. We're about to see, we're seeing remarkable young players in today's NBA. I'm just not sure if certain powerful figures didn't sort of juice the game of basketball for their own designs, and we've ended up with a much more flawed product. I'm not sure of that yet. I may just be some old guy grumbling. So we'll have to reserve judgment on that. But I wonder and worry about that because I do love basketball.
Roland, we have a couple minutes left, and one of the things that that does come across in your book is not just Magic on the court, not just Magic as an international figure, but Magic as a business person. And it seems like Magic, Michael, those players from that generation were able to monetize is one word, but able to build upon the career that they had on a court to building businesses in communities. Um, what have you learned from talking to people about Magic, about the movie theaters, about everything else that he's done about Magic the Mind?
I had fascinating conversations with Peter Guber, who was chairman of Sony in the early Sony USA in the early 90s. They were building theaters. He gets a call from Magic Johnson, who wants a meeting, and these two black guys show up at the meeting, Magic Johnson and his money guy, who is a really, really sharp money guy. And they propose that there's this great overlooked a segment of the market, black neighborhoods, where Sony should build theaters. Guber was quite taken with the presentation. The money people from Sony looked at it up and down, said, hell yeah. And that was Magic's first big success in the business world. And it was substantial. He later went on and sold those theaters and has moved on to just an absolute whirlwind of business enterprise. He's got every kind of business operation you can imagine, insurance companies, all kinds of contracting companies, all of it aimed at elevating economic opportunity for Black Americans. And that is part of his great mission. And it is very impressive. The nuts and bolts of it are very impressive. And it makes this, I mean, it's a great basketball story, but it's so much bigger. The fact that he was HIV positive, that he really was out of control. That's a function of that whole climate in the 1980s in Los Angeles, and frankly, all over the place. But he became caught up in having lots and lots and lots of unprotected sex. It really made him an unliked figure. People wept when he resigned abruptly, but as the story came out and he was seemingly too eager to talk about it, it became a great negative. But it didn't matter. He was able to, this great emotional intelligence and humanity that he possessed enabled him, and his great drive and heart enabled him to overcome all of that and to make the kind of gains and to create the kind of example that make this a truly great American story, one that took me 800 pages to tell.
Well, and we encourage people to pick up that book, read all 800 pages to learn the story for themselves. The book is Magic, The Life of Earvin, Magic Johnson. Roland Lazenby, thank you so much for the time. We wish you the best of luck with the book and look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you for your extremely thoughtful questions and slowing me down on a day when I'm going much too fast. You guys have a great day.